Hey there, it's Emily Juries, licensed clinical mental health counselor. The topic of this episode is about how to react and respond to our tough or unpleasant feelings that we often kind of rather avoid or push away, kind of instinctively. Don't really want to have to feel those things. I'm hoping to show in this video that avoiding and pushing away can actually sometimes worsen quality of life, and how allowing the emotions and experiences to be there is the antidote. Part of what I'm going to be recommending here is allowing in difficult feelings. So if you've been having a hard time recently with feeling really overwhelmed or consumed by intense emotions, then I'd recommend seeking professional help. And if you're having any suicidal thoughts or urges, you can call 988 or your local emergency number. Okay, so first I want to discuss the benefits of tough feelings. This is something that you practice in therapy, in meditation, in pain management, in self-help books. The idea of accepting, allowing, and understanding your feelings without judgment is a really key skill for overall health and quality of life, so it's frequently recommended and taught. Here's an example. Let's imagine you're sitting watching a show with your partner, your roommate, your sibling, a friend. Then there's kind of this tightness in your chest or in your shoulders. Maybe you notice an inkling of kind of annoyance, and it's a little uncomfortable. So you just work really hard to refocus on the show. And at first, maybe this works fine. You kind of laugh along with the show, focus on that. As time passes, maybe hours or days or weeks, or maybe just minutes, you maybe notice feeling a little distant from that person, or maybe you start making passive-aggressive comments towards them. And at this point, you start to realize that overall, you're just a little more irritable, and you're not really sure why. So now if we back up to that first moment of noticing that, oh yeah, there's a little tightness in my chest or shoulders, instead of just refocusing in on the show, lean into that without judgment. Tightness, tension, anger. You realize you feel angry, so then you inquire with your anger. What are you trying to say? You recognize that once again, you didn't get to pick out the show, and you have never been asked what you wanted to watch. It feels a little unfair, and thus angering. So now, you can proceed with a better understanding of how to move forward. Maybe you decide to still return to enjoying the show, but since you gave the emotion attention, it's not something that continues to build resentment over the other person that then comes out in other ways. You might also now have more awareness of this trigger, so in future evenings, maybe you get ahead of that and you do ask if you can pick the show for that night. Or maybe you communicate your feelings the moment you feel it. I'm realizing I'm starting to get angry about not getting to pick the show. Can we check in with each other about what to watch going forward? Either way of handling it, addressing it in that moment, or focusing on the show and kind of just knowing that as a trigger going forward, you're much more likely to not have background resentment building up and creating a disconnection like what had started happening without leaning into that discomfort. Taking the time to lean into emotions and understand where they're coming from and then respond from there can dramatically change your mood and connections with other people. And that's, of course, a smaller example that can happen just in our daily lives. There's much bigger examples and moments of harder feelings that can have even greater impacts on our mood and how we go about our day and how we interact with other people. In the book Daring Greatly, Brené talks about the idea of normalizing discomfort. She says instead of trying to increase comfort with uncomfortable feelings, confrontations, and vulnerabilities, we instead need to normalize the fact that it's not comfortable, and that's okay. And the benefits of being temporarily uncomfortable far outweigh our attempts at avoiding it, particularly because the more we avoid, the more uncomfortable and limited our lives can become. Another way to think about the benefits of leaning into uncomfortable feelings is through primary and secondary emotions. primary emotions come up based upon whatever initially triggered them, and then secondary emotions occur as a result of the primary emotion. We often fall into the trap of feeling sad and then feeling embarrassed about feeling sad, or feeling anxious and then feeling frustrated that we're anxious. These secondary emotions are still valid, like all feelings, but we can experience much fewer secondary emotions when we're willing to give non-judgmental attention to our primary feelings. If I feel sad and I immediately tell myself it's okay to feel sad, I can be with this, it makes sense to feel sad, then I'm much less likely to experience secondary embarrassment, frustration, or shame, whatever might have been built up from our past experiences. So in this sense, using techniques to lean into discomfort and unpleasantness can actually have immediate short-term relief and reduce unpleasantness. So there are long-term benefits of not having emotions build up and creating disengagement or disconnection, and short-term benefits of having less secondary emotions that can make the situation that much more difficult. Okay, so now that I've given my pitch for the why of not avoiding tough feelings and discomfort, I will give you a few strategies to do this in a constructive way. So first, I want to discuss the skill of noticing signals that you're becoming overly consumed or engulfed by your emotions. Just as avoidance is not very constructive, trying to manage feelings at a 10 out of 10 escalation level is also not very constructive. So you want to know your own personal signals of being at a 7 out of 10 or higher in feeling escalated. I use the word escalated because it can be different emotions that are happening that are escalating and occurring. My dogs are knocking on the door. I can't actually tell you what your signals are because we're all different with what emotions are likely to escalate, and we're all different with how they present. But some clues to keep an eye out for are paying attention to your body, urges, and certain emotions. With your body, it might be things like tightness, tension, shaky, clenching your fists, feeling warm, having your eyebrow or jaw tense or clenched, crying, your heart rate going up, breathing changes, stuff like that. When I say urges, I mean things that you kind of suddenly, impulsively, or just have the urge to do, like run away or yell or push, kick, or throw something, or you feel like you're going to cry, or you really want to isolate and withdraw from people, or hit yourself or hurt yourself, or eat or drink alcohol. And then with emotions, emotions can be hard to detect a lot of the times. We usually need to spend a lot of reflection figuring out what our emotions are. But some more obvious emotional experiences that you might notice right away could be like anger, frustration, irritation, sadness, panic, pain. So my recommendation is to start paying attention to all these pieces when you're experiencing a shift in your emotion and help determine what your signals are. Okay, now I'll give you a behavioral skill that helps in titrating in unpleasant emotions, which can be particularly helpful for experiences that are more intense or overwhelming or hard to let yourself feel. So you can use this for less intense emotions too, and that will help give you some practice and prepare for using it for other intense emotions. It's called setting your home base. I learned this technique through meditations in the meditation app 10% Happier, started by Dan Harris. Your home base is a place where you can return to if you notice that you're beginning to feel overwhelmed by your emotions. So first, you choose a home base, a focal point that you can count on being there. So maybe it's focusing on your feet or your hands and the sensations that are going on. Right now, my hands are really quite cold in my fingers, but my palms are warm. So I can just pay attention to that. Maybe it's focusing on your breath. Maybe it's pressing your thumb into your other palm and focusing your attention on that. Maybe it's focusing on your left elbow and trying to see what sensations are going on there. Maybe it's focusing closely on the sounds occurring around you. You want it to be something in the present moment that is a mostly neutral stimulus. And once you've chosen your home base, practice focusing on it. The idea is for you to be able to feel calm in your home base. So slowing down your breathing in your nose, and maybe taking slightly deeper breaths are great ways to strengthen this feeling of calm, regardless of what else you're focusing on. Once you feel solid with your home base, like you're able to focus on it, you're able to feel calm there, you can then start trading in the challenging emotions. So maybe you're in a therapy session, or maybe you're with a friend or family member talking to them, or maybe you're journaling. And in any of those circumstances, you're maybe thinking or talking about an intense moment of maybe feeling really depressed or really anxious or anything else, really lonely. So you can talk or write in more detail about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, how this is impacting you. And then if you notice beginning to get overwhelmed to the point of it being too much, you return to your home base for a few breaths. And then you can try it again. This way, you're allowing yourself some time to be with the unpleasantness, but then pulling yourself back out of it if it's too much. So you lean in, and then if you notice your signals of it becoming too much, maybe some tightness or tension, then we take a step back, go to your focal point. And then you can lean in, and then you can go back. This way you're allowing yourself some time to be with the unpleasantness, but then also pulling yourself back out of it if it's too much. Okay, so now a cognitive strategy. This practice helps with accepting and allowing tough emotions to be there. And I call it the bench visualization. I got this from the book First We Make the Beast Beautiful, A New Journey Through Anxiety by Sarah Wilson. She describes visualizing herself sitting on a bench and her anxious self sitting next to her. You don't have to do anything else with this. Just imagine sitting next to yourself on a bench, and the self next to you is dealing with whatever you're feeling: anxiousness, depression, loneliness, sadness, anger, frustration, whatever it might be that's going on. The idea is to have a non-judgmental and permissible vibe towards this feeling, towards this other self that's experiencing the feeling. It also helps as a reminder that you are not the emotion and you are not defined by that emotion. It's just something occurring and happening in that moment, and it's okay for it to be there. Sometimes I expand this visualization by giving my anxious self a little side hug and a warm smile to really emphasize the acceptance and compassion that I'm trying to convey towards that feeling. Feel free to make your visualization your own too. Okay, so those are my strategies for allowing, accepting, and practicing non-judgment towards our unpleasant or challenging feelings. The resources that I mentioned are again cited below in the notes, and the images are on the blog post on my website. Thanks for listening in, and I hope you have a great day.